In this video, we'll be going over examples for the lesson on completing the square. Let's start with number 1. First, this left-hand side looks kind of interesting. Is this already a square? Well, if I take this 2, and I take half of it, that'll give me a 1. And 1 squared is 1, which is there. So I already have a square quadratic on the left-hand side. And this square quadratic is x plus 1 squared. So that's the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side is 16, which is really just 4 squared. This means that x plus 1 is equal to plus or minus 4. In other words, x is equal to, if I move that plus 1 over, it's negative 1 plus or minus 4, which gives me the result. So x could be negative 1 plus 4, which is 3, or negative 1 minus 4, which is negative 5. For number 2, it looks like they didn't do so much for us already. Let's start by moving that negative 10 onto the other side. So I'm adding 10 to both sides. Over here I have x squared plus 3x, and that's it. So now, if I look at this and I try to find that square quadratic that's so special, I take 3 and I divide it by 2, which will give me 3 halves. And 3 halves squared is 9 fourths. So I'm going to add 9 fourths to both sides. But now that I've done that, I can express this left-hand side as x plus 3 halves squared, because we found a was 3 halves in this case. And this has to equal 10 and 9 fourths. That's a little messy, so let's just simplify this. That's the same thing as 40 fourths plus 9 fourths, which is just 49 fourths. So now let's go ahead and take the square root of both sides. On the left-hand side, we have x plus 3 halves. And on the right-hand side, we have plus or minus. Well, the square root of 49 fourths is the same thing as the square root of 49 over the square root of 4, which is 7 halves. So it's plus or minus 7 halves. Now, if I subtract 3 halves from both sides, that'll give me x is equal to negative 3 halves plus or minus 7 halves. So this will give us our answers. Negative 3 halves plus 7 halves is 4 halves, or 2. Negative 3 halves minus 7 halves gives us a negative 10 halves, or negative 5. And those are our solutions. Now for this last one. Well, to begin with, we're not really used to having coefficients here, so let's go ahead and divide everything by 2 to get rid of that. So this will leave me with x squared minus 7 halves x plus 5 halves is equal to 0. Now let's go ahead and move this 5 halves over to the other side and put a negative in front of it, or really just subtracting 5 halves from both sides. So now we're left with this. Let's try to find out what the rest of this square quadratic would be. So let's take this middle term, divide it by 2, which gives us negative 7 fourths, square it, which gives us 49 sixteenths, and then add that to both sides. So here we have 49 sixteenths And here we have 49/16. Now this left-hand side can be factored into x minus 7/4 squared. And we can also simplify this over here. This is the same thing as negative 40/16 plus 49/16, which is 9/16. So we'll write that down here. Now let's take the square root of both sides. This will yield that x minus 7/4 is equal to plus or minus 3/4. And now if I add 7/4 to both sides, x is 7/4 plus or minus 3/4. So now this gives me my solutions. X could be 7/4 plus 3/4, which is 10/4, and 10/4 reduces to 5/2. So we could have 5/2, or 7/4 minus 3/4 is 4/4, which is just 1. And those are our solutions.